What's up, people? I'm Erica, and this is Cocktails Capitalism, a podcast that pairs crafted beverages with stories distilled from our capitalist hellscape. Today we're joined by Alex Zambito. Alex is on the editorial board of Midwestern Marx, a website and journal offering Marxist analysis of politics and history. He's currently a graduate student pursuing his master's in history. His work focuses on anti-communist repression campaigns in Western democracies and the history of proletarian struggles around the globe. Hey, Alex, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, hanging in there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for working hard to pull together this story for us, because I think this is going to be a really compelling and mind-blowing story for a lot of people who don't know anything about COINTELPRO.
You almost said COINTELPRO.
I know, I almost, I always say COINTELPRO.
She's been calling it COINTELPRO for like a week, and then she listened to some stuff on it, and she's like, it's not COINTELPRO.
Yeah. But yeah, let's just jump into the story here.
Okay, well, awesome. So basically, I wanted to not just cover COINTELPRO, because COINTELPRO doesn't actually officially start until 1956, but I wanted to cover historical origins of domestic surveillance on a federal level, at least. Mm-hmm. We're actually not starting in the 50s or 60s, where like COINTELPRO starts. We're pretty much going to be starting back in the 19th century. So fun.
Wow. Nice. So Alex, can you just kind of explain to people what COINTELPRO is?
So COINTELPRO is basically just the FBI acronym for counterintelligence, which is sort of a misnomer because technically counterintelligence is something you carry out against foreign enemies. Basically, it was the usage of those techniques used against what were supposed to be foreign enemies and using them on domestic political groups that essentially challenged U.S. social order. So a lot of targeting like civil rights groups and obviously the Communist Party and the Black Panther Party were a huge part of like COINTELPRO operations that extended until about the 1970s.
That we know of.
Yeah, technically. The supposed end was in 1970s, but the Church Committee also found, which we'll get into a little bit later, they found that they were still like have at least, several operations going on after the official end. So yeah, it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
Are you saying the FBI lied?
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit.
Once or twice.
What?
Maybe a big bit. Oh, cool. That's really helpful just to kind of get people situated in what the overall topic is here. But yeah, let's dig back. We're starting in the 1800s. Shut the fuck up.
What?
Let me just say my weird fucking words.
You know the thing that people say? Oh, let's dig back into that.
Fuck off.
Really dig back there. Root around back there.
That was a great introduction to what the topic is. So now we're going to jump back into the beginning of the story, and I believe you said you're starting from the 1800s, right?
Yeah, so I know it's supposed to be about COINTELPRO, but the series of operations that are actually what we consider like under the canonical COINTELPRO don't actually start until like 1956. Domestic surveillance in the United States has its origins in the Civil War. So in 1865, the Secret Service was created within the Treasury Department to track counterfeiting bills, and also obviously throughout the whole Civil War, the military intelligence was operative, gathering intelligence for the military effort during the Civil War. After that, in 1871, DOJ was given investigation authority of the country, so this is kind of like the proto-FBI, because technically the FBI is still within the Department of Justice. But this is sort of like the proto-FBI, but it's definitely not on the same level. It's basically the first instance of like, kind of a federal police force, but it's definitely not like the same thing as basically a federal coordination of more like private detective agencies and local police forces, especially, I don't know if y'all know who Alan Pinkerton is.
Yes.
Alan Pinkerton he was in Lincoln's War Department. He ended up founding the Pinkerton Detective Agency, which coordinated with the FBI for like a long time. And actually, the FBI would basically just retain the service of Pinkerton agents as part of the FBI until it was outlawed in 1892 as a conflict of interest. But yeah, so basically the Pinkerton had a revolving door with the FBI for a long time. And the Pinkertons are very famous for crushing labor movements throughout like a lot of the 19th century and basically being hired hands for corporations, basically crushing labor movements during what we call the Gilded Age now.
Hold on. Are you telling me that there were federal agents who represented corporate interests operating under the guise of U.S. authority? Who could imagine such a thing?
Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, no, it's very shocking.
Yeah.
We'll see a couple more instances of that happening, believe it or not. But yeah, it does happen. It is sort of a theme.
And a little tangent here, the modern Pinkerton Detective Agency, I guess it's basically still in existence under a different name, and they were employed to spy on people organizing within Amazon to try to form a union. So they're still around doing the same fucking shit that they were doing in the 1800s.
Yeah, the Pinkertons are still active. They're still out there. They were very influential in the formation of the FBI. The FBI also used Secret Service agents to help with intelligence until basically President McKinley was assassinated by an anarchist, and the Secret Service basically was more focused on solely protecting the life of the president.
I see.
Around the turn of the 20th century is when you kind of get like a more formalized actual federal police force, which would turn into the FBI later, but now it's just called the Bureau of Investigation, and it was founded in 1908 by Attorney General Bonaparte.
No relation.
To Napoleon?
Yeah.
No, it is. No, 1 second. No, that's the fun fact.
What?
Oh, fuck, what?
Shut
So,
up.
I'm 100% serious. No, I'm 100% serious. That Attorney General who formed that was the grandson of Napoleon Bonaparte's brother.
What the fuck?
But he was definitely related. Yeah. So the guy who essentially created what would turn into the FBI was the grandson of Napoleon's brother.
Oh my god.
So yeah.
This is so weird. Like, the same fucking powers just don't go away ever, it seems like. The Pinkertons don't go away.
Pretty much.
Fucking...
The Bonapartes don't go away.
Yeah, fuck.
But yeah, that was like, I saw that and I was like, there's no way. I was like, there's no way this is actually like someone related to Napoleon. That's ridiculous. Like, that's too on the nose.
Shit, dude.
But yeah, so that's a wild little fun fact. But following that, for the next 10 years, it's just like kind of formalizing the Bureau of Investigation, basically formalizing them into like an actual police force and kind of steadily growing them, especially, and a big turning point for the Bureau of Investigation and for domestic surveillance in the U.S. was obviously the First World War. So a big part of expanding the domestic surveillance powers and authority. In 1917, the federal government passed the Espionage Act, and in 1918, they passed the Alien Act, which both of these things basically targeted people who were deemed to be disloyal and had either anarchistic or somewhat Bolshevist political ideologies, so people that were deemed undependable in time of war. And these people were targeted for basically harassment, so anybody in like sort of like radical political organizations were targeted for harassment. So 6,000 immigrants, people who had immigrated to the country, some of them not even speaking English, were arrested, and around 2,000 were deported during World War I. Also around this time, the FBI announced the cooperation with a U.S. vigilante organization called the American Protective League.
Oh, they just sound like bad guys.
Yeah, they sound
right,
awful.
For real. Imagine your Trump-supporting neighbor Randy just like looking in on you, like hanging out on your organization, trying to find the communists. That's essentially what these guys are doing. Yeah. They worked with the FBI on a national level. So the first target of the BOI and the American Protective League was the IWW, or the International Workers of the World, which was an anarcho-syndicalist union focused on kind of creating a Big Tent union. But they also had views that were not in accordance with U.S. World War I policy, so they were targeted by the American Protective League and the BOI. 165 leaders were arrested for conspiracy. Over 100 of them were placed on trial, including a pretty famous head of the IWW, Bill Haywood. Haywood and 14 others were sentenced to 20 years in prison.
For what? For conspiracy?
For basically being disloyal during wartime. Essentially, so yeah. Let's see. IWW President William Big Bill Haywood and 14 others to 20 years in prison. 33 were given 10 years, the rest shorter sentences. They were fined a total of $2,500,000. This entirely shattered the IWW at this point.
Wow. Fuck.
That's what you get for thinking about things different than us.
For being a critical thinker.
That's what you get for not wanting to join this imperialist bloodbath.
Oh, fuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Imperialist bloodbath sounds kind of cool, though, huh?
I'd
watch that movie.
God damn it!
That sounds like a death metal song. Another little fun fact. So, as part of the raids against subversive alien elements, one of the people that was rounded up and arrested was Emma Goldman. and her lover. I think Alexander Bernstein was his name, but they were arrested, and they would later be deported as part of the Palmer raids, which we will get into right now. So the fun continues. So even World War I repression continues even after World War I, even after technically the Espionage Act lapsed and no longer applied.
What is the Espionage Act?
So the Espionage Act was one I mentioned earlier, made it illegal to say anything that was like considered seditious or like that could hurt the War Act, or it could be deemed like, supporting the enemy. Essentially, it's one of those bills. One of those bills of like saying like you might be supporting the enemy during wartime, sort of thing. So if you like interfere with drafting people or that sort of stuff, like spread what is deemed false information, that sort of stuff. Basically anything that might hinder the war effort.
Yeah.
That and the Alien Act.
It's a pretty broad net, though.
Yeah. Basically like communist or anarchistic beliefs, but yeah, a lot of times they just carried out raids. And those raids would, anyone who was just like happened to be in the wrong place, if they were just like an immigrant that didn't really speak English very well, they might just be arrested and just be counted in with everyone else, even if they were just hanging out somewhere.
Not like today.
Yeah, not like today. Not like today where everything's on the up and up.
On the up and up.
Another big target during the war for the BOI and federal intelligence was the slacker raids. So basically people that were deemed to be avoiding the draft.
Slacker raids?
Wow.
Like you're slacking off?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. God. So if you were not presenting yourself to the draft boards, 50,000 people were arrested.
Whoa.
1,500 people were directly inducted into the military, and then another 15,000 were just directly referred to draft boards.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so that's what happens if you just if you dodge the draft, you got rounded up.
They kidnap you and make you fight.
Jesus.
Yeah, so even after the war, and like I said, even after the Espionage Act formally lapsed, and technically the war was over, the repression funds still continued with the Palmer raids. So directly after the war, there was actually an anarchist bomb plot ring that was happening across the country. So there were actually several anarchist groups around the country that carried off some bombings in the United States. And one of them was actually targeted at the Attorney General, Palmer, and the guy who went to go deliver the bomb actually tripped and fell and dropped the suitcase with the bomb was on the stairs, and it blew him up.
Oh my God.
He was blown up beyond recognition.
Oh God. And died?
Yeah, he died.
Beyond recognition,
he was
okay.
blown up beyond recognition.
I don't know,
Weirdly, he survived.
I don't know, I just thought that he was maimed, so then you couldn't recognize him.
It just ruined his face.
No, he's dead.
Jesus Christ.
Sorry, guys.
He tripped on his bomb and was blown up beyond recognition.
Okay, sorry.
You see what I deal with? She has a PhD.
You can get it.
Nice.
They shouldn't have hired Inspector Clouseau to deliver the bomb,
Yeah, they should have found somebody. Okay, so around this time, the Attorney General Palmer created a unit called the General Investigation Division. J. Edgar Hoover is the man appointed the head of the GID, and he also becomes the assistant head of the BOI. Following the bombing, Attorney General Palmer approves a series of raids throughout the whole country, arresting people. This is basically carried out from July 1919 through June 1920. So the GID is mainly focused on curbing domestic political dissent. Basically, the main crescendo of the Palmer raids comes on January 2nd, 1920, when 10,000 people are arrested. Many of those people, like I said, were just people that were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And a lot of these people may not have, a lot of them were immigrants. Like I said, a lot of this was targeted against basically immigrants who had considered radical beliefs. Especially a lot of Italian and Spanish immigrants that came over.
Italians with their radical beliefs.
Anarchistic, yeah. Yeah, can't trust those Italians.
You can't put lemon in pesto? What's wrong with you? Yeah, things like that.
Cut that.
That's a thing that an Italian would get mad about.
Okay.
I would get mad at that. Yeah, my last name's Zambito. I would get mad about that.
You would get mad at that?
Just don't put pineapple on pizza and we're good.
I know someone who got their Italian visa revoked for that.
Good, they should. Okay, so one of the parts of the Palmer raid continues for about a year, till about mid-June 1920, and thousands of people are rounded up in this raid. Some of them are deported, and a lot of them are supposed to be immigrants or people who did not formally have like U.S. citizenship, but a lot of the intelligence gathered was on people who did have U.S. citizenship, and it was given to like local prosecutors to help with potential future prosecution against those people in espionage case, in potential like other cases. A lot of these people, like I said, didn't speak English, and up to this point, like immigration trials, you're still supposed to be able to have like your counsel there from the beginning, but the Attorney General basically allowed the FBI to like begin proceedings without like having a counsel there, so violating someone's constitutional rights.
Yeah.
One of these people that this happened to was called Andrea Salcedo, I think is his name. I think that's how you say it. But he was an Italian immigrant, and he was held for, I believe, up to 8 weeks without being able to talk to his family, without counsel. He was found crushed on the pavement, having jumped from 14 floors out of police custody.
Out of police custody?
Yeah, so it's theorized that it might have not have been suicide. He might have like been thrown out the window.
I mean, like, how do you let someone get out of where you have them imprisoned to be able to jump off of the building? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean,
so sus.
It's not like you hear about like a high profile, potentially suicide risk person that might be able to like incriminate a political figure committing suicide under mysterious circumstances under 24-hour guard today, right? Like, you would never hear about something like that.
Definitely not.
Sorry, who?
No one.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, this guy was probably not very high profile. But I think he was just a random guy.
Oh, well, that makes it okay.
So, two people who did think that Salvedo probably was suicided instead of committed suicide were Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, who were accused of committing a bank robbery that left 2 bank clerks dead. And they were basically subsequently put on trial, railroaded to prison, and executed about 7 years later.
Wow.
I don't think it was actually them being silenced for the Salvedo thing. I think it was mainly just more
targeted for their activities.
Yeah, they're anarchists that were targeted for being anarchists, and they happened to be the wrong place at the wrong time, and they're Italian immigrants along with that, which at the time, that was not...
That's bad enough. Without being an anarchist. God forbid you're Italian and an anarchist. It's like the worst 2 things you could be.
They're most likely, I think they're most likely innocent, but that's just me. I'm a commie, so. So I'm a little biased in that.
Yeah. But I mean, you're probably fucking right, because the track record with the shit and the amount of cover up that goes into all of this, that's...
Yeah. So those are the Palmer raids. A bunch of people got deported for their activities. So following the Palmer raids, the FBI does still continue these sort of like explicitly political activities. So immediately after, the new president in 1921 is Warren G. Harding. He appoints William J. Burns as the head of the FBOI, and these guys are crooked as hell, and they just spy on all of Daugherty's political opponents. But even while the rest of the BOI was basically just going after Daugherty's political opponents, the GID under Hoover was actually still focusing on bashing radicals. So even during basically a very large railroad strike in the early 1920s, Hoover's GID agents infiltrated the movement, and so about 1,200 unionists were arrested and several sent to jail. After a little bit, Daugherty, the Attorney General, basically kind of overstepped his bounds by accusing a mainstream senator, a Democrat, of basically red baiting him, and that got him in hot water and got him removed.
What's that?
Calling him a communist?
Red baiting? Oh, yeah, red baiting is like calling someone a communist, basically. It's saying that they're a communist, so it's called red baiting, yeah.
I mean, we see a lot of that kind of finger pointing going on right now online even. But it's awful. We don't need to go there. It's all ugly and difficult and challenging for the left, so blah.
Yeah, it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So after Daugherty gets removed for red baiting the senator, he's replaced by Attorney General Harold Fisk, who sets out to formally reform the Bureau. And at this point, Hoover becomes the head of the whole BOI. And he gets it redesignated the FBI. So now we are FBI, and I can quit like freaking out about saying BOI and FBI. So it is now FBI.
Officially, yeah. Nice.
Yeah, so I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about the slips or anything.
Except now you might accidentally call it the BOI.
Yeah, now what if I call it the BOI? Yeah.
Don't fuck up now.
Even with Fisk supposedly reforming the FBI, a big thing is that the FBI, throughout the war and throughout the Palmer raids, were able to basically collect files on thousands of people, and they basically created like an index of people that were considered like subversive elements, which will come to play a little bit later. But even after supposedly the FBI was formed and it was supposedly not doing its like purely like political activities anymore, it was still doing its political still doing at least a little bit of its political activities. At this point, it wasn't. They weren't doing as much because, I mean, Hoover basically already decided. Like, the reason he was cool with Fisk was he'd pretty much already decided that the radical elements or leftist elements in the U.S. were effectively decimated, which he was pretty much right. Like, the Palmer raids had pretty much like destroyed membership in the IWW and the Communist Party and other orgs. So they still had time to target particularly black nationalist groups. So particularly Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association. Hoover and the FBI targeted Garvey for infiltration, and the UNIA for infiltration kept coming up with things to charge Garvey on, and eventually got Garvey for wire fraud, and he was deported back to Jamaica in 1927. Garvey was one of the early victims of what would basically be considered like a COINTELPRO operation. After infiltrating the UNIA, the FBI does kind of at least lay off a little bit on domestic intelligence. Like I said, Hoover had basically estimated that pretty much any radical political organizing in the U.S. had been decimated by this point. So he's kind of okay with like easing up a little bit. However, that doesn't mean like they stopped doing this stuff altogether. Throughout like the late 1920s and early 1930s, they were still very much like going after like labor organizing and any sort of like major strikes. So I mean, certain strikes like Blair Mountain. There was also Bloody Harlan in I think it was Harlan County, Georgia. Even when they're going light, they're still not really going that light.
FBI light, yeah. Damn.
Yeah. So, so the FBI was still, they were still doing that, and they also even throughout this whole period, the whole like thing I gave you to talk about earlier, the index of subversive people, that kind of comes back into play here because people who happen to be on the list were first. Many of them were, during the Great Depression, were denied from the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, which is basically like a New Deal agency that helped people get jobs in public works projects. And if you were on the list, you could be denied a job with the WPA. So that means that basically meant all these people were excluded. In 1932, a bunch of World War I veterans who were called the Bonus Army, they descended on Washington because, this is the middle of the Great Depression and a lot of them are very poor. They essentially set up camp within Washington, and Hoover used the old index of subversives to paint this whole movement of former veterans as communist influence and had them all scattered.
A movement of veterans, even?
Yeah.
Yeah, the U.S. always takes care
honors
of
our veterans.
And yeah, that's so wild.
As we saw so much in the episode that we just released last on the Oahu Water Protectors. Anyway.
Oh, sidebar, come on down to the sidebar. We're gonna make drinks and talk shit about capitalism.
So you guys just heard our brand new intro song for the sidebar, and we have Rathbone to thank for that one. We gave him a few ideas, and he just ran with it, and I'm so fucking stoked with what he made. So
with lyrics by John.
With lyrics by John. He literally said, come on down to the sidebar, we're going to make drinks and talk shit on capitalism. And then those were the exact words that Rathbone used in the song. So
no notes.
We were pretty stoked about it.
Yeah, John's basically a modern day Bob Dylan over here.
Yeah,
so.
I'm a singer-songwriter, and I didn't even know it. I don't even have to sing.
You better watch out, Erica. He's going to go and leave you and become like a singer-songwriter and have a whole career.
I won't let it happen.
Start my own podcast.
Crush your
about all
dreams.
my great songs.
Well, welcome back to the sidebar, folks. We're joined once again by Jesse Torres, our resident anti-capitalist bartender, and we are so excited to share the beautiful drink that he made for this episode. It was really, really fucking tasty.
Jesse, you just heard the song for the first time. What do you think?
I love it. It's the perfect intro that we needed and we didn't have, so
Yeah.
so glad that we have it. Thank you, Rathbone. It's awesome.
Fuck yeah, Rathbone. Cheers to Rathbone.
Cheers to Rathbone.
Yeah, cheers.
Clink. You guys can go find Rathbone on Instagram, and we'll put a link in the episode description so you can find him there. So we are drinking the Agent Provocateur cocktail. The name refers to the kind of agents that the FBI would use to kind of infiltrate leftist groups and try to stir up trouble. Yeah, I thought that was a really cool, kind of sexy name, even though it's a dark topic. I can't wait to hear about some of the choices that you made to create this drink, Jesse.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really a sexy name. I mean, it was sexy enough that an Australian company decided to make a whole lingerie line out of it. And
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, it is absolutely like a sexy name. And that's kind of like where it stops. The whole operation and all the shit that they did is pretty awful.
Yeah.
This is an instance where we're like not trying to like glorify any of that or put that like on a pedestal because, I mean, obviously that's awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're instead trying to shed light on it and create a drink that has as much sexiness as the name has on its own. So this drink basically is a variation of a daiquiri. A lot of people know frozen daiquiris, and that's not really what a daiquiri is. A daiquiri is a cocktail that was created during Prohibition times, really, that has a base of rum, has fresh lime juice, and it's sweetened with sugar. That's basically it. It's a rum sour.
Huh.
But this one takes a little different twist, and it has fresh strawberries because we're making a really delicious strawberry syrup. And it has a little bit of bitters, which adds a little bit of spice to it. We're also using a really great rum. This uses Rum Bar Gold Rum from Jamaica, and this is probably one of the best rums you can get for its value. It's aged for about 4 years in ex-American oak. It's got higher ester level, so that means it's really flavorful. There's a lot of flavor in this kind of rum, and it really has kind of a fruitiness that lends itself to the strawberry and the lime. All together, like it's really intense and beautiful and really delicious. So, I mean, like I feel like rum is the spirit of the people. It's inexpensive and widely available, and it goes so well with so many drinks. There's not too many spirits that are as versatile and as accessible as rum. It's also like the underdog. Like rum in this country is kind of maligned. Like I think when people think of rum, they think of Captain Morgan and Bacardi. And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of really good rum out there, especially right now. Like I think we're like in a rum renaissance right now. Rum obviously has like a huge colonial history and a racist history, and it's a really great story to see how it's overcome that and that the power has returned to the people that make it instead of the colonizers. And so, yeah, something really cool.
Was that part of your reasoning behind choosing the rum for this cocktail?
Partly. At first, it was a nod to Marcus Garvey. He was Jamaican, and he was one of the first targets of the FBI back when they were first formed in the 20s. And they successfully like charged him with some petty crime and deported him back to Jamaica. You know, I've known that story for a long time, but it doesn't fit because Marcus Garvey was a teetotaler. He didn't drink at all. And he was very much against people drinking. So
Oh, wow.
I didn't think it was right to like make a drink in his honor because he wouldn't have liked it to begin with. Like he was like totally anti-drinking. So
I love that you focused on his story, though.
yeah, I mean, it's a great story. And like I've learned a lot about him outside of this. I just didn't know that he was a teetotaler. So the main ingredient for this is obviously the rum, and we're using Rum Bar Gold Jamaican rum for this. Rum Bar is a really incredible and versatile rum, and it comes from Worthy Park Estate, which is one of the oldest distilleries in the world. They've been making rum since the 17th century, since 1670, and they have their own sugarcane estate. So all of their rum is made from their own sugarcane, which is really rare these days.
Wow.
And it's made completely in the old way that they would have done hundreds of years ago. They're making it naturally fermented, all on their double retort pot still. And this one, the gold one, is aged about 4 years or more in ex-bourbon barrels. This is a rum that has been produced for hundreds of years, but the value has been given to the colonizer, aka England. Only recently, within like the past 10 or 15 years, has the value of the rum they produced by Jamaicans been given back to its people. And so they're able to make rum under their own terms, under their own name, and keep 100% of the value, which I think is pretty incredible. It's basically throwing off the old colonial model and doing things for themselves. So super cool. So not only are you having really delicious rum, but you know, you're supporting Jamaicans 100%. And if you can't find Rum Bar Gold Jamaican rum, there's a lot of really great Jamaican rums out there like Appleton Estate or Hamden or Smith & Cross that you can use in place of Rum Bar. Worthy Park and Hamden are 100% still owned by Jamaicans. Those are two that are really worth seeking out, and both go really well in this cocktail. So
Nice.
not only you supporting Jamaicans, but you're having incredible rum. So the next important ingredient is the strawberry syrup. And this is a really lovely and fresh thing that really makes a world of difference because you're basically taking fresh strawberries, adding some sugar to it, and making probably one of the best syrups you've ever had in your life. It's really easy to make. What you want to do is take strawberries, clean them, cut off the tops, and then dice them into small little pieces. Find out their weight, and then weigh sugar. That's the equal weight. So if you weighed out your strawberries and they were 400 grams, then take 400 grams of sugar and add them to the strawberries. And then mix them together so they're all coated, and then wait about 3 hours. And then in those 3 hours, stir them up, mix the sugar so that it dissolves, and you basically have a syrup at the end of it.
So the sugar pulls out liquid from the strawberries?
Yeah, absolutely. We're not adding any water to this. The two ingredients are strawberries and sugar. The sugar is going to draw out all the moisture from the strawberries, and all that moisture has all that strawberry flavor. And what you have is a really beautiful, clear syrup that's just loaded with strawberry flavor.
I just made it earlier today. The juices from the strawberries really dissolve the sugar, so you'll end up with a really clear syrup that doesn't have any of the, granularity of sugar. Beautiful reddish pink syrup. So tasty.
Yeah, and it's intense with fresh strawberry flavor. It tastes just like you're eating fresh strawberries.
So fucking good.
Yeah, everything else is easy after this. So you take 60 milliliters of your Rum Bar Gold Jamaican rum, take 20 milliliters of strawberry syrup, about 22 milliliters of fresh lime juice, and a couple dashes of aromatic bitters. Put everything into a cocktail shaker with ice, shake it up really good, and then fine strain it into a coupe. Lastly, garnish it with a really beautiful strawberry slice. And that's it. Enjoy.
So delicious. Such a great drink, Jesse.
Boom, into the glass. You're good. Slam it like I do, and then you're great. Yeah.
That's how you drink these drinks, Jesse?
Sidebar to the sidebar. I used to live in San Antonio, Texas. Shout out to all my San Antonio friends and bartenders out there. San Antonio is affectionately known as Slam Antonio because we slam our drinks, specifically daiquiris and Manhattans.
The idea of you slamming Dax tonight?
That's right. That's fucking how we roll.
Slamming daiquiris is the most hilarious thing. That's actually a good band name.
Me and the boys slamming daiquiris all night long. Yo, Mickey, you want yours blended?
You just wait till I get down there in May and you're slamming daiquiris with me.
We're gonna slam some fucking daiquiris together, Jesse. I can't
just
wait.
I would slam a daiquiri with you guys.
It's gonna be great.
It is.
It's a slammable daiquiri.
Yeah, I just want to make another one
seriously,
right
next
now.
time you make one,
slammable.
just chug it all in one go. It's great.
This is not the classy cocktail method of drinking that I would expect you to be doing, Jesse.
Yeah, after that intro song, we gotta, keep it
really classy.
Yeah. This is
Try to maintain a certain level of bouginess on this anti-capitalist podcast.
I once again have to remind you of the non-classy aspect to myself in drinking.
Look, if there's one thing that's really important to us on this podcast, it's class. It's being high class.
I thought you meant ass. I thought that was the most important thing on this podcast.
Class, ass, and grass.
All right, look at that. There we go. Now we're talking. Look, just because I make classy drinks for people doesn't mean that I'm classy, all right? Put your little pinky out, take a little sip.
And then just keep tilting your head back until
it's gone.
That was so fucking great, Jesse. I love this drink, and thank you for putting it together and for making another really, really special one for us.
I was going to say something really sassy, but...
Do it.
Do it.
Don't ever hold back.
Yeah, seriously.
I love you guys.
We love you, Jesse.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever make anything that's not delicious and tasty for you guys, so I'm glad you guys fucking enjoyed this again. You...
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
That's it. I'll stop. I'm going. I'm done.
Wait, what? A what?
I would never expect anything less from you, truly. You always fucking deliver.
I'm just having a great time over here. I really love making drinks for you guys, and for everyone out there who is making these drinks and trying them. Thank you so much.
Fuck yeah.
I'm really glad that I can make a difference.
Fuck yeah.
You know, if that's just by making a drink, so be it.
You're making all of the hard truths about our capitalist hellscape much more palatable, so thank you, Jesse. It was so good to talk with you again. Thank you so much for making this amazing drink and for coming on the show again. It was great.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here. Hope you all enjoy out there. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So obviously, like I said, even during the FBI light, there's still like a lot of strike breaking, that sort of stuff. What the role of the FBI gets consolidated in the late 1930s, in the lead up to World War II by the Roosevelt administration. So in 1936 and through like 1938, basically Roosevelt issues directives to begin targeting subversive elements within American society that posed like a threat or a potential who are potentially disloyal to the U.S. in the case of war. So this is like when the FBI begins like using infiltrators among the Communist Party and also other groups attached to like Nazi Germany. So like U.S. Nazi groups were also somewhat targeted.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, so that's a good thing. Yeah, like so actually one of the things in this is that this kind of like has taught me is that like the FBI like had COINTELPRO against white hate groups and stuff, and like the KKK, which like they're expanding COINTELPRO, but I'm also like not that upset when the FBI like kills my enemies. I don't know. That doesn't really bother me.
From what I was hearing about their infiltration of right-wing groups and the KKK is that they would often do that in a way that would allow them to further attack the left, almost like infiltrating and carrying out violent acts in these right-wing groups against leftist organizations. So even if they are also infiltrating and undermining some of these other organizations on the right, sometimes that's to target the left still.
One of the things that's unique about like they're targeting right-wing groups like the KKK is, first of all, even like the church committee hearings completely acknowledged that the techniques they used against them were generally like a lot lighter and a lot like less dangerous. So like they were generally a lot more careful to not like endanger their lives. But like I think you have a point with what you're saying is that they did use like hostile third parties like the American Legion.
Yeah, exactly.
There were some groups that one of the tactics they used with the KKK and other groups. I mean, another COINTELPRO was literally creating fake organizations that were like either like majority FBI informants or like partially FBI informants. I mean, part of it was to like take away from membership for the United Klans of America, but still like it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, I mean, especially if they had agent provocateurs within the Klan and they used them to like target blacks as civil rights groups, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Also, part of this expansion is the creation of the custodian detention program, which was basically...
They arrest janitors.
Yeah. Yes, as janitors. Basically, the FBI using that index we talked about earlier and using that and like using other intelligence gathering to create another index of people that are deemed subversive and basically politically unsavory. And they would be the first ones to be rounded up in the case of an emergency and put into concentration camps.
Good.
Great.
Yeah, so more fun. To keep in mind, this is also entirely separate from the internment of Japanese Americans at the time. So this is just entirely people who had like communist sympathies and I mean also Nazi sympathies. That would have been good, I guess. But
yeah.
But it's a different concentration camp.
Yeah.
Scheme. Yeah, God.
That custodian detention program, that index, it basically turns into like a communist index and then like serves as like files for politically subversive people for the next like 20 to 30 years. So, yes, and that expands like thousands of people the FBI was keeping files on. Yeah, so the FBI kind of does a lot of like working with military intelligence and other intelligence to help with the war effort.
You mean World War II, right?
Yeah, World War II. This is like a little bit of an interesting aside, is that they basically set up a network of intelligence operatives in Latin America, helping the governments in Latin America to weed out, political dissent and that sort of stuff, which is the extension of U.S. imperial ambitions. I would honestly kind of think it was like a progenitor to like Operation Condor, which is something that comes up in the think in the 70s and 80s. 1940, the government passed the Smith Act, which becomes very important in the Red Scare because the Smith Act basically makes it illegal to promote the overthrow of the United States government, essentially. So any like political party or political organization deemed to like have that as their goal could fall under that. This period basically sees the beginning of like the Red Scare. So we see like, you know, the development of like House Un-American Activities Committees. 1947, President Truman issues an executive order which begins investigations into the loyalty of government employees. Congress, over Truman's veto, assigns into law the Internal Security Act, which forces communist front groups to register with the federal government and codifies the whole idea of creating a list of communists to put in prison if there's any like the Soviet Union. Then Congress in 1954 passes the Communist Control Act, which says that the Communist Party is not like due any of those sort of political rights that other organizations are due.
Oh, cool.
They don't technically directly deal with the FBI, but they contribute to a condition where the FBI is like okay to like do its activities.
Has free reign.
Yeah, essentially.
Shit.
Essentially kind of contributes to that sort of attitude.
I'm getting the impression they didn't like communists.
Yeah, not at this time. Not 1950s now, they're not fans. A lot of this was focusing just on people like employed in the federal government, so like a lot of times teachers, so like a lot of targeting like people's First Amendment rights to be able to like have political opinions and like have a job.
Yeah.
That was a lot of it, targeting, contacting employers and that sort of thing. Was kind of a big part of like Red Scare around this time.
They call up your boss and they're like, this person's a fucking communist and don't hire them or fire them or whatever, right? Isn't that it?
I mean, you just find ways to insinuate that they would be communists. You could either like contact local papers or contact parents, go to the school and be like, we're FBI and we're here about this person. And that why else would it? Why is that just raises suspicion by itself because you're the FBI show up to ask questions about somebody.
It's so petty and so stupid. It's just, ugh.
When we get to like the new left stuff, they would literally just contact parents. Like
I know, that blew my mind. I'm like, what the fuck? They're not like the babysitter or the like, you're like tattletelling on the leftists. Like, what the fuck?
They also use this for something called common fill investigations, or basically communist infiltration. Like I've already been talking about, they believe that pretty much a lot of groups like served as like communist front groups. So they investigated the NAACP and also how like Martin Luther King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference got sucked into COINTELPRO. It was basically on the same things, was basically just trying to connect Martin Luther King and his organization to communist groups.
Okay, wait. Were they actually concerned that these groups had communist influences, or was this like an excuse to fuck with these groups?
I go back and forth on that because segregationists definitely use like Red Scare to like infiltrate and to demonize like red bait civil rights organizations. Like the NAACP was basically constantly under investigation from like the 1940s to like the early 1960s for like communist infiltration, and they had like the NAACP had been like explicitly anti-communist for a long time and even like purged communists from the entire organization, which like to me it just kind of goes to show it's better if you're like a left liberal group like that. I would honestly argue it's better to fully reject things like Red Scare, because really like segregationists, I don't know if it was the segregationists conservatives were just being facetious and didn't actually care and were just like willing to call them communists because they just wanted to hurt the NAACP and like be able to like constantly bring up lawsuits against them and harass their leaders, or if segregationists were just like that delusional that they believed that like the NAACP had to be infiltrated with communists and that sort of thing. If you go back to like segregationists and like Southern ideology, a lot of it was just based on the idea that like everything would be hunky-dory here if it weren't for outside agitators, and like the Red Scare just kind of served as perfect for that. Everything would be fine and went for the bunch of commies like riling up, you know, black people in the South. Like everything would be perfect like racial harmony if it weren't for that. So it just kind of like perfectly fit into like that ideological compass too.
Yeah. From what I was learning about J. Edgar Hoover, he wanted to shift the focus away from communist groups and more towards Black organizations that he thought were potentially going to bring about a revolution and unite with the communists and overthrow the government and stuff. But he was just really looking to find that narrative.
Oh, yeah.
If his agents would come back to him and give him a report that said, we actually found no communist connection to Martin Luther King Jr. He actually doesn't subscribe to these things. You know, he's not talking about this right now. He would say, go rewrite the report. and come back to me. And then they would come back with a scathing fucking report saying that, yes, they're infiltrated by the commies, so it was like top down dictating this political agenda for the organization that would really drive the main thrust of what they were doing in the political landscape in America. That was kind of the takeaway that I was getting from the direction that Hoover was really pushing everything in.
Yeah, I mean, Hoover was, you can't really understate the paranoia of J. Edgar Hoover. He was very worried that, like, the Communist Party would gain, like, huge influence among black people in the U.S. And to an extent, like, I mean, the Communist Party did actually say, like, we're trying to recruit among black people, like...
Because of common cause.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. Like, the actual, like, influence of the Communist Party was pretty, like, marginal. There's still plenty of communist influence, especially, like, things like the Scottsboro case, which we can get into. There was definitely, like, plenty of crossover there, but not as much as, like, maybe J. Edgar Hoover tried to make it out to be. Targeting, like, the NAACP as a communist organization is ridiculous.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They have participated with communists to an extent in some ways for, like, coalition work. Like I said, the Scottsboro case, which was black boys who are, like, accused of raping a white woman. And obviously a trumped-up charge in the South. And, so, I mean, the Communist Party was, like, their main legal defenders. So there was, like, certain crossover there, but it was never, like, as significant as, like, Hoover tried to make it out to be.
Makes total sense.
Okay, so now we can just get to the kind of the meat of COINTELPRO against the communists.
Nice.
So the first COINTELPRO was against the CPUSA when it officially began in 1956. The FBI had basically been targeting the Communist Party since before World War II. They've been targeting them. They'd already, like, infiltrated the CPUSA and stuff before this point, but the whole main thing was to prevent people from joining and to essentially disrupt the activity. There were, like, a lot of different projects to this and a lot of different ways they did it. Yeah. So against the Communist Party, one of the ways they did it was through agent provocateurs or through infiltrators who would do things like bring up old arguments and shit. One of the main things was, like, they would constantly bring up the Khrushchev's secret speech. Khrushchev's secret speech was a speech where he denounced Stalin and listed what he said were Stalin's crimes, and that was, like, a huge point of contention in the Communist Party in the U.S. at the time. A lot of COINTELPRO is basically just designed to waste your time. It's, like, really not even that dangerous. A lot of it's just more mundane than, like, what we think about.
Yeah.
Someone showing up to your meetings all the time, literally just bringing up old arguments and bullshit that y'all talked about, like, and argued about a million times. Just keep bringing the same topic up over and over again.
Just derail, detract from the main movement that you're trying to bring about.
God, it must be so annoying to try and work with someone who's constantly derailing the discussion just for, like, pointless dumb shit.
Infuriating, even.
So yeah, a lot of times it was just basically wasting people's time. So, and another big part of it was, like, harassment arrests. So just, like, showing up and, like, bugging the hell out of people, arresting, like, party leaders or party members just to hold them and just annoy them, really. So yeah, that was part of it. And then also one of the main things with the Communist Party COINTELPRO was Operation Hoodwink. The FBI attempted to create violent dispute between the Communist Party and the Sicilian mob. So they're basically just sending letters to mob members and Communist Party members trying to get them to, like, into some sort of violent conflict.
But oftentimes they are infiltrating and then participating in the violence that they're supposedly trying to crush, you know?
Like, one of the things you'll see is that, like, the big part of the rift in the Nation of Islam between Malcolm X and between Elijah Muhammad was because the FBI was sending letters to Elijah Muhammad saying, like, oh, Malcolm's talking shit about you, that sort of stuff.
It's so high school.
Yeah. From the Communist Party, they kind of expand into other groups, so black nationalist or black power groups. Particularly, they go after Martin Luther King, the SCLC. So the FBI wiretapped MLK's phone for a long time. We're also sending him, like, threatening letters, like, basically telling him to commit suicide. Sending his wife letters telling her that he was, like, being unfaithful, which is also a technique that's used throughout COINTELPRO. They do that sort of stuff, try and mess with people's personal lives as well. So there's a lot of controversy, I know, around Malcolm's assassination to the extent the FBI was involved. I don't really know enough details about the case of Malcolm's assassination to really go into that, but I can say we do know that the FBI was definitely trying to exacerbate the rift between Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm, and there's definitely part of their MO. Okay, so in 1967, the FBI institutes its formal COINTELPRO for black nationalist groups, so basically targeting, like, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
So COINTELPRO isn't, like, one giant org. Each COINTELPRO targets a specific political organization.
COINTELPRO is just the acronym for counterintelligence that the FBI used, and it basically just refers to, like, the series of operations. Like, it's basically the collective term used to refer to, like, the operations against these groups. So, like...
I see.
But each individual entity they're targeting would have its own program.
Yeah, they're, like, different COINTELPRO programs. So, like,
I
there would be, like,
see.
it would basically under its own filing. So, like, there was Operation Hoodwink, which would go under, like, communist COINTELPRO of the CPUSA. Then there's, like, COINTELPRO, Black nationalist groups. I think there were 5 or 6 total, like, in the main period of COINTELPRO. There's one for Black nationalist groups, one for white hate groups, one for the New Left, one for the Black Panther Party, and the one for the Communist Party. Oh, and then another one for the Socialist Workers Party. During the war, while they were focused on infiltrating the Communist Party, and to be fair, some Nazi groups, they were very bad at, like, actually tracking, like, corporations in the United States that were sending money and stuff to Nazi Germany during the war. They did not.
Of course.
That was kind of a bit of an afterthought.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to go after corporations. I mean,
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
yeah.
Just people, just humans.
The people in charge wouldn't like that.
Yeah.
Won't somebody please think of the oligarchs?
But at this point, they had turned more towards, like, Black Power, like Stokely Carmichael, later Kwame Ture, and A. Brown, later Jamil Al-Amin, had, like, kind of begun to turn to, like, towards Black Power at this point. But yeah, so they basically expanded their targeting of these groups. So, like I said, they went after Malcolm and they went after SNCC. And so this kind of feeds into, in 1968, they began COINTELPRO against the Black Panther Party. They would do things like, sending anonymous letter to encourage rifts within the party. So one of the things that they did was sending letters between Huey Newton and Eldridge Cleaver, who were basically, Huey Newton was the founder of the party, and Eldridge Cleaver was also high-ranking in the party, and there's a split in the party between the two of them. And the FBI basically sent them letters back and forth to encourage the split as much as possible. The FBI is responsible for the feud between them. And then also, they do things like try to create rifts between the Black Panther Party and other groups. So, like, media publications supposedly from SNCC attacking the Black Panther Party. The SNCC and the Black Panther Party had, like, kind of created a sort of alliance at the time, created a rift between the two orgs. And they did the same with, like, other New Left organizations, like, that were part of, like, the student anti-war movement. So they'd, like, create rifts between them and possible, like, allied organizations. Snitch jacketing was also a very favorite thing, which basically... snitch jacketing, or bad jacketing. It's basically creating the impression among a party that someone is an informant. FBI agents just, like, start interviewing them, like, just in front of other people.
That's enough.
Yeah. And then, like, or, like, just sending anonymous letters saying this person's an informant. They did that. The FBI did that with Stokely Carmichael, sent the letters to Black Panther Party members, because Stokely had also joined, at least on, like, a certain level, with the Black Panther Party, and they had, like, sent, like, letters saying that he was a CIA informant. So that was, like, one of the ways they neutralized him. The Black Panther COINTELPRO is probably the one that, like, really showed how violent things could get. In late 1960s, Fred Hampton becomes the head of the Chicago Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party in Chicago is still pretty small. At the time, he accomplishes an agreement between the Panthers and the Blackstone Rangers, which is kind of more like a gang instead of a political group.
Cool name, though.
Yeah, it is a cool name. But Hampton managed to, like, talk them into do community outreach and basically to politicize their program instead of being a gang. They were now, like, to do more, like, political work and stuff. So he, like, managed to recruit them. But pretty quickly, the FBI saw that and didn't like it. So they recruited an informer called William O'Neill. And a big thing with pretty much all of these informants is the majority of the time, they're people with criminal records that the FBI has leverage over. And that they can either give them, like, shorter sentences. And that's pretty much the case with, like, William O'Neill as well. But he became an infiltrator in the Black Panther Party of Chicago. And immediately, the FBI set about, like, sabotaging the alliance between the Blackstone Rangers and the Black Panther Party. Sending letters to Blackstone Rangers members, basically talking about how they couldn't trust the Black Panther Party. And O'Neill basically went out of his way to start issues. He was named actually head of security for the Chicago Black Panther Party, and one of his things, he was, like, pretty overzealous with security. He suggested, like, things like making an electric chair and all these other things that were immediately rejected by Hampton. He also apparently bullwhipped a member that he accused of being an infiltrator, ironically.
Wow.
So he was basically a piece of work. But he also assisted the FBI in the assassination of Fred Hampton. So William O'Neill basically provided the entire floor plan to Fred Hampton's apartment, which the FBI used with the Chicago Police Department to assassinate Fred Hampton. There's also believed that William O'Neill probably drugged Fred Hampton before he went to bed, because Fred Hampton didn't wake up during the whole time. But the Chicago PD kicked in the door, immediately shot Mark Clark, who was a Black Panther Party member, and then immediately turned and shot into Fred Hampton's room and shot him several dozen times.
In his bed.
Yeah, he never woke up, and his pregnant wife was right next to him the whole time.
Yeah.
Fuck.
The Breonna Taylor story, it feels like we're just reliving the same fucking shit and we haven't escaped it, you know?
Pretty much, yeah.
It's wild that the FBI was, like, interested once the gang got involved in political activity. They're like, oh, this gang's doing politics stuff now? That's not cool. Like, we didn't have an issue when they were just a gang, but now that they're doing community outreach? Fuck no.
They're feeding children in schools? Can't allow that to happen.
And the Panthers already had trouble with local police, obviously.
Yeah.
The Panthers started in 67, but the COINTELPRO doesn't start until 68. The Oklahoma Police Department already had, like, list of vehicles that were basically Panther vehicles that they would harass.
Jesus.
A kid named Lil Bobby Hutton, I think he might have only been 18, but he was killed in a clash between Black Panther Party members and the Oklahoma Police Department.
Wow.
He was unarmed. Yeah, and that was, like, shortly after the assassination of MLK. Obviously, there are a lot of accusations about FBI involvement in that one as well.
Yeah. You could make a very strong case for that one being an assassination by the FBI.
Yeah, several people in MLK's family definitely believe that the FBI was involved. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Next is the case of Geronimo Pratt and the LA Black Panther Party. COINTELPRO was basically trying to get conflict between target groups and other groups that were more violent. So one of the groups that this was used on was in LA. The Black Panther Party had a dispute with a rival black nationalist group run by Ron Karenga, and they're generally a little bit more violent. And basically the FBI did everything it could to exacerbate conflicts between them, sending like threatening letters between U.S. members and Black Panther Party members. One of the outcomes of this was the assassination of John Huggins and Alprentice Bunchy Carter, who were basically two prominent leaders in the L.A. Black Panther Party. Afterwards, Geronimo Pratt, who is a former U.S. Army soldier, he became the head of the LA Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party in LA was basically also infiltrated by Julius Butler, but also someone called Melvin Cotton Smith. He helped the LA Police Department and the FBI with a raid against the LA Black Panther office. So yeah, and Geronimo Pratt was like pretty much heavily targeted after that point for harassment, and eventually he was arrested for supposedly like fleeing a court date. But they ended up putting him on trial for a murder that he pretty much obviously didn't commit.
Wow. Fuck.
An LA Police Department detective received a letter saying, "Do not open except in case of my death." Even though the person had never died, the detective, being very honest and nice, decided to open it anyways. And it basically accused Geronimo Pratt of committing a murder at a Sacramento tennis club. There's pretty much evidence now that there's absolutely no way he could have done it. He was never there. The person that accused him of that was Julius C. Butler, so the FBI informant. Is the one who sent that letter and is the one who accused him. Butler also served in his trial, called on to testify in his trial, and eventually Geronimo Pratt was convicted and sentenced to jail in San Quentin. I'm pretty sure. I think it was San Quentin. And Julius Butler, before his became an informant, he had like 5 federal criminal offenses. After he testified against Pratt, he was able to get his law degree and pass the California bar. It was very convenient for him.
So there were some real good deals going on there.
That's such a Cinderella story.
And this also brings me into another thing that the FBI did, which is tampering with evidence. They'd already had the LA office bugged, and after a very long time, the judge for the Pratt case basically required the FBI to turn over their files and turn over their recordings, and they eventually did do that, but it turns out they had lost or destroyed somehow just the footage that would exonerate Pratt and showed that he couldn't have committed the murder.
Shoot.
That was just conveniently
what
left
are the
out.
Chances?
Yeah. In Redmond, Connecticut, a Black Panther Party member named Alex Rackley was basically accused of being an informant and was murdered. The FBI used this murder to attempt to link it to Bobby Seale. Bobby Seale was one of the founding members of the Black Panther Party, by the way.
Yeah.
And they linked it to him and claimed that he was involved in the murder. Turns out, Alex Rackley was actually murdered by an FBI informant named George Sams. And then they basically put Seale on trial for the murder of him, although eventually Seale was exonerated. So the last COINTELPRO is COINTELPRO against New Left. The FBI used New Left as a very broad category. So it's a very broad group that basically allowed them to target any like student movement or like any sort of like radical anti-war movement. A lot of times stopped like professors from being able to speak, stopped like a lot of speakers. Big focus on the supposed immorality of the new left. So basically, like saying, "Look, they smoke weed," so like trying to get like people arrested on
They have
like
so much sex.
yeah,
They're partying so hard.
Literally, one of like they were just trying to like basically uncover things of them like walking around naked together or some shit like that, and trying to like publicize that or like send it to their parents or stuff like that, like trying to get them arrested on marijuana charges and talk about like their depravity and that sort of stuff.
What a bunch of fucking degenerates.
Yeah.
Smoking weed and getting naked.
Yeah.
That
So-
sounds like the best time you could possibly have.
I feel like with the new left, a lot of it was more stopping First Amendment rights. One of the groups that they targeted was the Weathermen. The Weathermen carried out a series of bombings. One of them was actually, I think, targeted at the World Trade Center. And so it turns out that the FBI had definitely infiltrated the Weathermen. And one of them, Larry Gothwal, I think is his name, was the FBI informant. And he may or may not have, assisted them in the creation of the bombs.
Nice.
And then, just to finish it, to put a little cherry on top, COINTELPRO was officially revealed by a group invading the FBI agency in Media, Pennsylvania. They broke in and stole documents basically relating to COINTELPRO and released them to Carl Stern, a reporter to NBC. And that is how COINTELPRO was officially revealed.
Revealed to
I
the
assumed
public.
it all got declassified, but no?
Oh, no. Well, I mean, it kind of did, because this thing I've been referring to throughout this is called the Church Committees, was an investigative committee headed by Senator Frank Church, who's named after, and they basically carried out hearings and investigations into CIA and FBI. So this is like where a lot of the information for the COINTELPRO comes from the Church Committee reports that happened, I think, in the late 70s. And they basically also come to the conclusion that the FBI had definitely continued doing COINTELPRO activities afterwards. They were like, yeah, the FBI said stop, but we definitely found evidence of at least 5 more that they're doing right now, or something like that. So that's kind of sort of the end of COINTELPRO. I don't really think it ever really ended. It's probably definitely still going, especially with Muslim Americans during the War on Terror.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, infiltrating a lot of mosques and basically coaxing along people to supposedly like join ISIS. And even though there was never like any ISIS people involved, The Intercept did a lot of good reporting on that. So I would just direct people to them. But yeah, they never really stopped. I think a few years ago, it also came out that they had like they're looking into black identity extremists, quote unquote.
Yeah.
The one thing I would take away is like COINTELPRO is obviously super scary and it could be obviously turn out to be very violent. But I think something to be kept in mind is that pretty much the majority of COINTELPRO activities were just the FBI being a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
It was more designed to like waste everyone's time and like just petty shit to like make the organization look bad. I would say like that was probably like the majority of COINTELPRO operations, were just basically things like that.
Except when they murdered people.
Yeah, except for when they assassinate people. Those are minority cases, but they're probably more important.
Yeah. I was going to ask you a bunch of questions about how this relates to capitalism, but I didn't lay any of those things out because I was like, this is so obviously related to like the repression of any anti-capitalist movement that has ever existed in the U.S. that we don't even have to cover that, you know? Mm-hmm. But do you have anything to say specifically about how it relates to capitalism that you would like to highlight for listeners?
I mean, I think the main point was the FBI kind of like seeing itself as like a protector of status quo of American society. One of the things we didn't even talk about was one anti-war group, basically some investors in like a company that like I guess was doing business in Vietnam had planned to do like a protest or something in the name of like opposing the company still doing business there, and the FBI basically intervened and prevented the meeting from being able to happen. So I mean, just like not only just like directly helping in some instances helping businesses and corporations, but like just maintaining essentially law and order, maintaining status quo social situation that allows for capitalism to continue and like continue exploiting people and make sure that any sort of like radical doesn't have any chance of success. Basically nip it in the bud before it has any chance.
Yeah, that's a great response. From hearing some of this history, it really seems to me like so much of what the FBI was doing with these programs was combating interests that went against the moneyed interests in the country. Anyone representing ideology that went against capitalism in any fucking way. Do you think that that's an accurate assessment there?
Yeah, pretty much.
Is that the same today? Would you consider that like the same goal today, or?
I mean, just like the targets have kind of changed in a lot of ways. They're probably still doing the same shit. Like, it's probably more focused on like online spaces now. It's also like obviously probably targeting more groups that like, where we're in conflict with. So like probably since the war on terror, a lot of it's been focused on mosques and communities of like countries that we're targeting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing for me is how easily it is to expand. Like I said, like some of the groups that got targeted just got targeted because they took positions that were deemed like favorable to geopolitical adversaries of the United States, and that's why they got targeted.
Mm-hmm. This story is so shocking. It's so fucking mind-blowing that like these are all programs that our government has done supposedly to like fight radical and violent and dangerous elements in our country, when in reality they're going and infiltrating these groups, literally trying to instigate the violence that they are supposedly trying to repress. I don't know, it's just such a mind-boggling story.
The main point of these things is like really just waste your time. Like, and that's like same thing with like a lot of online discourse. You'll see like the same discourses brought up a million times. Like, just have the same argument that everyone's had a million times, and like, yeah, it's just about wasting your time and like disrupting things, making it to where like you can't like focus on the day-to-day activity of like what a political organization should be doing, which is like talking to people and providing for people. So it's basically just any way to distract people from doing that.
Would you advise leftist organizers to be wary of that kind of interference from the FBI, to be like
I guess
mindful of that kind of shit?
The whole point is also to make you more paranoid. So it's kind of like it's like a fine line, because like, because I think there's like a little bit of a fine line between like being like we want to be secure and like make sure we're not just posting like selfies all the time or whatever, but you kind of have to accept the fact that you're probably going to get infiltrated.
That's the takeaway.
It's probably just going to happen, and it's like I said, it's good to try and prevent that. Obviously, I don't think you should just assume that you're going to, and it's like, okay, whatever. I think it's more making sure that infiltrators don't get to create like dumb rifts within the party over like petty disagreements, and like just staying focused on what's most important, serving people. Yeah. Trying to make contacts with your community. I think those are just the most important things you can focus on. At the same time, the whole point of this is also to make you paranoid. So you don't want to put like too much stress on it, I guess, because then that's just like the whole point of it. Mm-hmm. That's what gets people assassinated for being police informants and that sort of stuff. So it's like a balancing act.
So you want to find like the paranoia Goldilocks zone?
Yeah, I guess so. That's kind of the best way to put
it. Yeah, being mindful that if we're doing this work, we are going to be put on these fucking lists, but there's strength in numbers, and hopefully that we can all be there to support each other through that shit, Alex, thank you so much for putting all that together and just giving people a better understanding of this history, which is so important for people on the left to be able to understand when they're operating this sphere. I really, really appreciate all the work that you did to be able to present this story. So thank you so goddamn much.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And where can people find you?
So, well, right now, my Instagram is still a bit down because I am taking a break. But normally when I get back up at Not Southern Marxist on Instagram, I'm still Southern Marxist on Twitter because I haven't been banned from there yet. Nice. And then my writing is at Midwestern Marx. My last thing was I did to continue with the theme. We talked about at the beginning. I talked about how the Red Scare inspiration of the British decision to create a mandate in Palestine. So I basically connect British anti-communism to that decision. And then hopefully soon I'll have an essay coming out, kind of about what we talked about here, but kind of relating it more to the Cuban Revolution and some of the COINTELPRO against that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Fucking amazing. I love the stuff that you are focusing on. Some of the most important stories from history to be able to tell people. And I'm so glad that you're going to be teaching students in the future and making them aware of our sordid past as Americans.
I'm going to try.
Yeah. But then if people want to follow Midwestern Marx, the website and the journal, they can do that at midwesternmarx.com. And then on TikTok, it's Midwestern Marx 1917. On IG, it's just Midwestern Marx. And on Twitter, it's just Marx Midwest.
Yes, exactly. All right.
Thank you so much, Alex, for coming on the show. This was such a fucking fun episode. And I'm so glad that you put the story together so meticulously. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
That's our show for this week. Thank you to Alex for coming on. Thank you to Dreamweaver for the use of our theme song. That's DRMWVR. Find him on Spotify or on SoundCloud. Thanks to Rathbone for our dope new sidebar theme song. Check him out on Spotify and on SoundCloud as well, or on Instagram at Rathbone or on Instagram at Rathbone_. He's got some fun videos on there. If you want to support the show, we have a Patreon, Cocktails and Capitalism. There's some good stuff on there. You can give us money. What's not to like? We'll see you next week.